Welcome to the Cadre's podcast, episode 2. Today we have our guest who is from Experiential Education Department, which is also called ExEd. So this is Kylah Hennessey. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very excited. So for a long time, our department has kind of joked about having a podcast because we often have felt like we have so many different things that we wanted to share with students. And so initially, I know you reached out to Karen with the co-op office, and she then shared the invitation with me. And so this is kind of like a bit of like a dream come true that our department is actually being podcasted. So thank you.
That's great. So let's dive right in.
Yeah, let's.
So, my first question is, can you share a bit about your journey? Like, how did you join the ExEd department and what drew you to the role?
So it hasn't always been called experiential education. I started at UPEI back in 2008, and at the time it was career services, and I was located in the Student Murphy Center over in what is now the Health and Wellness Department. And I worked with what was called Student Affairs at the time, Student Services at the time, and now it's called Student Affairs. And basically, career services was me. And I worked with that department for a number of years. And then there was, a bit of shifting and moving, as is normal on campuses. And they decided to move career services with co-op. And at that point in time, we were also partnered with a few other folks who were also in the process of relocating. So at that time, I was still career services, but now it was sort of career and co-op. And then it was back in, if my history is correct, in about the fall of 2018, that we became Experiential Education and Work Integrated Learning. And as you can tell, that was a bit of a mouthful. But for a period of time, we remained Experiential Education and Work Integrated Learning because that was part of a funding request or a funding grant that we had received. And so that title was already part of it. And then it was probably about 6 years ago that we dropped the Work Integrated Learning and became Experiential Education. And from there, we do a lot of ExEd as the shortened version. So I joined what was career services at the time as a career counselor because I was very interested in working with students on their career journey. And I'm still here. I'm going into my 17th year, and I still love what I'm doing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a long answer, but
no,
yeah.
It's okay. Yeah, I think it must have been a really interesting and like joyful. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all things in a workplace, there's always challenges with change, and at the same time too, there's lots of growing and learning opportunities in working with different people. So there's different people that I've worked with throughout my time here, some within the same department and some just as colleagues, but it helps really get to know the university environment well. So I really enjoy that.
That's great. Can you tell me a bit more about your current role in the ExEd?
Yeah, so currently I still do the same thing I've always done. So predominantly I work behind closed doors with students. Most of my conversations are confidential, so they're one-on-one with students talking about various different ways that they connect with career. So often I reassure people that when there's personal things going on in somebody's life, it's very hard to work on the what am I going to do when I graduate. And so a lot of the work that I do with students, it is connected to career, but sometimes we have more personal conversations and work through some of those things before we can get to maybe the employment or the what I'm going to do with the degree. But mostly the conversations are career related in terms of either current or into the future of what students want to do. And these are often very hard and vulnerable conversations people have because it's not easy to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I can say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, like finding a job is really daunting and exhausting. Like especially like when students usually also have like to juggle with their schoolwork and stuff.
So I like to frame it that everybody's employment experiences are building their career path. So there's nothing that's not helpful or valuable. You may not like it and you may not want to do it, but that is guiding you more towards more of what you want to do. So it's really, if you think about career, think about it as a series of different experiences, paid and unpaid, that help pave the path to defining your career.
That's great. So moving on to the next question. So I know that many students have heard about the EXED, but can you give us like a brief overview of the EXED and its mission, like for students?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, we always, as much as you said, I'm sure a number of students have heard, we always wonder sometimes, do students know that we exist? So this is we're more than happy to have more students know about our department. And I did make a few notes because we do a lot of different things. And so I want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. So, but basically the premise of our department is being able to help students connect their learning, their academic learnings to their career goals. And so the work integrated learning and the experiential education is gaining different experiences to help students make career-related decisions. And for everybody, that can take place in a different way. So one of them is certainly we meet with students. So like I said, I meet one-on-one with students and can have those conversations. However, we have two fantastic student assistants as well that students can meet with. So on Tuesday afternoons, there's drop-in hours, so they help students with employment-based questions. They also offer online appointments, so you can meet with them in non-traditional hours, so Thursday evening and Saturday morning this semester. We also do a number of different events that are employment-based. So we have our showcases. So we have a volunteer and employment showcase. So we started those back in COVID, and we've kept them. We have one employment and one volunteer one a month, so 2 a month. They are 12:30 to 1:30, and it's a way for us to build our relationship with employers and community organizations, and our way to help students continue to stay engaged in finding both employment and volunteer opportunities. So my colleague Jess Cameron, she coordinates the showcases, and she also coordinates the afternoon service afternoon of service, and those we try to have at least one a month. And those are connecting students to different opportunities. We do a lot of work with the Mount. So again, it's a volunteer experience. Now that I'm trying to remember, I can't remember, like we've gone in and done like decorating cookies and carving pumpkins, and we've helped out with apple orchard collection over in the Mount. So a variety of different opportunities just to help the students who sign up to connect with community. What else do we do? In March, we have our annual career fair, and so we'll have it in the Murphy Center here in McMillan Hall, and we have usually up to 30 different employers who come in, and so it's helping students connect to summer employment and after they graduate, employment opportunities. We have a variety of different work integrated learning opportunities, and one of them is a bursary that we've been very fortunate to offer over the last couple of years for students who are in courses that have an internship component that they can apply for this bursary. And this coming summer as well, we will continue our International Student Employment Program, where we support international students in finding employment opportunities that are more aligned with their degree. And so that is something that our department works with the provincial government on to get funding to support the employers as well as the students. So that's been a great opportunity that we've been able to offer for the last number of years. And then, of course, we have our co-op program. And our co-op program consists of Chrissy Ewing and Karen Turner, who Chrissy works with students and primarily, and Karen works primarily with the employers. And so that's their way of giving students work integrated learning opportunities built within co-op. So those are, there's always a few other things that our department offers, but that's sort of the bulk of our offerings.
That's wonderful. I still remember, like, when I was in my second year, I contacted the EXED once and to ask them to ask you to like help me review my resume, and I had an appointment. I forgot her name.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, and it was so amazing. Like with that appointment, like I never knew. I need to do this. I need to do this, and like my resume should look like this. So it's really great. Yeah,
I mean, I think again, it's great for students to know, and all students to find out at different times of the years. I mean, we're the kind of department that it's great to know about when you need us. And sometimes if you're not in a job search mode, or you feel like you're pretty secure in your career decisions, that we might not be a department that comes up in your journeys here. So it's certainly not for all students, but it can be helpful for those who need the support. Yeah.
Okay. So you also mentioned like about the career services appointment. So what can students expect in those appointments?
So there's different appointments that we do offer. So like I mentioned, we have a couple of student assistants, and so you can meet with them during drop-in hours, and that's Tuesday afternoons where you don't need an appointment, or you can meet with them virtually. And so typically our student assistants will help with resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, and sometimes if there's maybe something like around like a LinkedIn profile or something to help improve. So that's sort of typically what student assistants see. So again, it's great to have those appointments available in non-traditional hours, so a Thursday evening and a Saturday morning. And again, you can just go onto our website, and there's a link there to click to have a meeting with. And so those typically are half-hour appointments, and sometimes they can go on a little bit longer. So those are more oriented towards, the cover letter or the resume. And it's, again, through COVID, I also I like the virtualness of working with a student on their resume or cover letter, because we can both be on our own computer.
That's right.
We can screen share. We can sort of collaborate easier without sort of being in each other's space. And so I do like those appointments virtually. I will also work with students virtually in those capacities. So, I mean, in terms of what to expect is basically, or what I hope is the answer to your questions and maybe more. That's sort of what the student assistants will focus on. And then with my appointments, what a student could expect is, a conversation. So again, if it's employment-based, we'll work on, or graduate school-based, we'll work on the application or the resume or the cover letter or letter of intent. So I work with a lot of students applying to professional programs or graduate schools. And that I spend most of the time sort of fall and early January with those applications. Then when we get into sort of early spring, late winter, there's some programs that have interviews. So I'll do some of the interview prep with them. So do a lot of mock interviews. And then the other appointments are more or less helping students with where they're feeling stuck. So I mean, today I've already met with a student, I met with a few students, and just sort of talking about, they didn't think that the major they chose was going to be the best fit, so they wanted to know about switching majors. We talked about, so again, academically, what those processes are, but we also talked about, what they were enjoying and, is that enough to want to switch majors? So again, those are difficult conversations, and there's different deadlines at different times of the year that make those conversations a bit more stressful. This time of year, there's not much you can do. Well, I guess you have until the end of February to drop a course, but you can't get in a course. You can always change your major or your minor. That's simple form filling out. But it's a nice timeline because we're not picking courses or making decisions, and you have almost till September to do that. There's different deadlines when students can register for courses, but it's a great way to talk about, what's missing, what else do you need information on? So again, a normal part of a conversation is like, what would be helpful for you in learning a bit more about that career? And so sometimes it's a conversation with somebody who's doing it. Sometimes it's a website and gathering more information. Sometimes it's looking at, all the courses that you would have to take, because sometimes students aren't even really sure, what the duration of the degree looks like. So it's often just a lot of conversation and questions about like what is going to be helpful for you. And then, like I said, sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's emotions. And I reassure students that everything that they share is confidential, because sometimes that's a very overwhelming piece of the story. Sometimes it's personal, where people have family members who perhaps who aren't well or who live on the other side of the world, and they're struggling with more of the personal issues, and so sometimes school can be a challenge. Sometimes, the emotions are more like, this is something I always wanted to do, and I don't know if I really want to do it anymore, and so that can be quite emotional for people. And then, of course, there's the piece where this is what my parents want me to do. And those are very hard conversations. And I've seen many students navigate these very difficult, challenging times in many different ways. But I guess it's helpful for people to know that appointments with me can be vulnerable. They don't have to be. They can be a source of information. They can be sort of whatever somebody is needing at the time. And then often too, students will make the appointment and they'll like, okay, whatever I made the appointment for is not what I want to talk about anymore. Now I want to talk about something else. So a lot of things happen behind those closed doors.
Yeah, I think what the EXED's doing for the students at UPEI, it's incredible.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I think it is really helpful for a lot of different students, and all for different reasons. Yeah.
So, do you have any success stories to share, from students?
I mean, I have hundreds of success stories. This is where I was like, oh, how would I, like, it would be impossible for me to pick one. I think like I could have a success story on a daily basis. Sometimes a success story is the student showed up for their appointment. And for different reasons. Sometimes because, they've struggled maybe with more of some mental health, and it's actually hard for them to show up for things. And so that's a success. But I think, the successes are, sometimes it's hearing about students and programs that they've applied to and gotten in, or jobs that they've interviewed and got. Sometimes I suspect, or I know, one of the biggest successes is convocation and seeing students graduate. For some students, that at some point seems almost impossible. And so that's, I think, one thing I love about my job is sometimes I have that ability to see students all the way through, where they might not be staying connected with me, but even just seeing their names listed on the degree list is something I celebrate, because I think that is such a important piece of our journey and how we've gotten connected. And for some, it's like I said, it's so hard. They have many things personally and professionally to overcome. And so when they do that, I am just so happy for them. But I think that's probably like the biggest success is that conclusion piece of when they graduate.
That's so sweet.
Oh, thanks.
I think I can see your passion, like when you're talking about like, the exit. Okay, so I think February is going to an end, so which means that we only have like just a little more than 2 months before summer begins. So, as a career counselor, do you have any advice for students who looking to secure a good summer job?
I think this time of the year, I would say it's not too early to start looking. So I just came from a class where I guess I wasn't clear on communicating this, is, when students are looking for jobs, I think it takes longer than they anticipate. So sort of February right now to start a job search, whether it's a summer job or a recent, like when you graduate, more of a full-time job, giving yourself time to plan and to start looking is super important. And I think the challenge right now is students are into midterms. Now February break is a little reprieve, but that's where I say, like, spending some time looking, not necessarily even at job postings, but that helps, but also just starting to think about, like, where do they want to work this summer? What sorts of things do they want to do? And looking at employers' websites and starting to work on resumes, and take advantage of those services where, yes, they're busy, but if they just, an hour a week to either meet with somebody or to start working on the resume will get that process started. So I think that's a big piece of advice. I think also being aware, again, of some of the offerings within our department. So applications are open, like I said, for our International Student Employment Program. And I forgot to mention, that's my colleague Shannon Snow, and they have coordinated that for a number of years. And so, taking a look at the application, submitting that application if students are interested, or asking questions to help figure out if they are the right fit for the program. Like I mentioned, we'll have our annual career fair in March. And so being aware and going, like I said, it's not on the website yet, but eventually it'll be on the website of the different employers who are coming. So to start doing some research into that, to start again, making time to look at the resume, because employers will start getting in touch and offering interviews. And so you might have to juggle an interview on the same day that, you have an exam or something. So that time management piece, whether you're graduating or staying in school, is a challenge. And but the more prepared you feel for that, it seems it feels a lot easier to manage. Yeah.
That's great. I remember when I first started to look for my summer job here. Like I remember struggling with, where do I find a job? Like I only know one website, UPEI.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so great that the EXED host networking sessions and job fairs.
Yeah, so one of the things I didn't mention is we do have a career services Moodle page. And so to speak to how sometimes it's where do I even get started? I think our career services Moodle page, it has a lot of information. So sometimes students are it's a little bit overwhelming. But I think it's also well organized that you can go in and there's a section there for resumes. So you can look at the different pieces of information for resumes and for job searching. So, if you need to know a few other websites to go to for job boards, that could be a good place to go to. Or again, that would be a great thing to come to our student drop-in hours to say where else should I be looking? Where they can, again, help identify a few different websites. Because again, for international students, especially first-year students who are planning to work in the summer, that is overwhelming. And it's I don't know where to start. So it is great to be able to have a place to go to gather that information.
That's wonderful. So what are some challenges you see students face the most when it comes to career?
I think some of those challenges are, well, again, I think there's two sides of the work I do. So there's employment challenges, and I think either not getting an interview or having the interviews and not getting the job. I think that's very challenging. And that's the piece where it can really take a toll on people's confidence. And so that's really hard. So I think both perseverance and patience is important, and to remember it's not a reflection that you're not enough. It's that you're not necessarily the right fit for that position, and that there is other opportunities for you. And so that's where the perseverance comes in. I think on more on the counseling side, I think one of the biggest challenges that students struggle with is realizing what they thought they wanted to do is no longer what they want to do anymore. And that I think is really hard. And whether it was the combination of they were doing it, for family or friends, or the courses, the content really was challenging for them, and it wasn't the same version that they learned in high school, and so it wasn't aligning for them. And sometimes the other thing that seems to be popping up more is people's learning abilities, and sometimes their learning abilities just don't align with the program that they're in, so it feels quite challenging, and they're not experiencing success. So I think that's probably one of the things that I see students struggle with is what they came to university for has changed, and it's no longer the what they thought they were going to do, and they can feel a whole mix of emotions. And it's trying to reassure them, and this happens through different conversations, that it is going to be okay, and that there are other possibilities, and that we don't have to label and name it right now. That they, and through working with me, can work towards finding other programs, courses, options that they're going to enjoy, because ultimately, I want people to do what they like, what they want to do. And, if computer science was what they started liking and it's no longer what they like, there's other possibilities. And so it's taking the time to explore that. And it depends on when it is in the semester. It can be much harder at different times. So mid-semester, it's very hard because you can't get out of anything. And when you're not passing your courses, that can take a real toll on self-confidence. But it's reminding and working with somebody to make sure that they know that there are other things that they're good at. And, with a little bit of work, we'll figure out what those could be. Yeah.
That's great. And also, like, talking about what people wanted at first is no longer like what they want now. So I think this also leads to our final questions. What advice do you have for students who started their career journeys?
I think on that note is it's okay to change your mind. I think that's one of the big messages I always want students to know is it's okay. You don't have to stay with what you started. I think it's also good for students to be reminded that they're not making a decision for the rest of their life. They're making a decision that feels right for now. And if in the future it no longer feels right, then it might be changing things. But that's how we learn. We learn through our mistakes. And for many people, that is a very challenging realization. Because when we go through life and we haven't necessarily had any struggles or challenges, and then we get to a piece where we can't figure it out, or we don't see how that outcome's gonna work, there's a lot of vulnerability and a lot of discomfort. And, I like to say, like, let's just settle in with the discomfort and know that it will pass. But right now it's hard, but it's going to get better. So the first part is realizing that this isn't going to go according to plan, because career is, however you want to say it, mountains and valleys, forks and roads. We change our mind because we are changing as we grow. And with that, our career is changing. And so I always say, like, ask your professors, ask family and friends of what they started thinking they were going to do and graduate with. Is that what they're still doing? Most of the time it isn't, or most of the time people are doing something where, like, they didn't even know it existed. So they didn't even know that would be something that they could do. And so I want students to stay curious, be open-minded, and recognize that the vulnerability is hard, but that they will work through that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think that was such great advice. Like, not only for the students, but for myself too.
I'm glad it resonates with you.
So this is also the end of our podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.